Hello, this is the luckiest maths teacher in the world. Thank you so much for tuning into this video on mean, median, mode, and range. So when you're calculating these, you're calculating the mean or the median or the mode or the range of a set of scores. You need a set of numbers like I have on your screen there. That's called the data. So we're going to calculate the mean, median, mode, and range of this data. Let's start with the mode because it's probably the easiest. So the mode of a set of data is just the score that occurs the most. So if we look at the scores in blue, you'll see 7 occurred twice, 10 occurred twice, but 8 occurred 3 times. 8 occurs more often than any other score, and so it is the mode. Let's now calculate the median. So the median of a set of scores is the middle point of the data. So if there's an odd number of scores, the median will just be the middle score. But if there's an even number of scores, you calculate it slightly differently. If the number of scores is even, then there'll be 2 middle scores, and you add them up and divide by 2. So note, when we find the median, the middle point, the data must be in order. So we can't just go here and say, oh yeah, this is the middle point of the data. We can't just say, oh yeah, middle's here, that will be the median, because this data is not in order. So to calculate the median, we must first put it in order. From smallest to largest, we have 1 is the lowest score, so cross that out. Then there's 4, 5, 6, and we might cross them out as we go, and so on until I've written all the scores. So now I have the scores in order, I just find the middle point. Now here there are 12 scores, there's an even number of scores, and that means there will be 2 middle scores. So here the 2 middle scores are 7 and 8, because here is where the middle point is. There are 6 scores below it to the left, 6 scores above it to the right. So these two are the 2 middle scores. So the median is halfway between them. If you don't know what's halfway between them, you add them up and divide by 2. So the median of this set of scores is 7.5. Note the mean, median, mode, and range don't need to be whole numbers. All right, let's now calculate the mean. So to calculate the mean, which is often called the average, you add up all the scores and divide by how many there are. So if I add up all 12 scores, you should get 83. So that's the sum of all the scores, divide by how many. Now there are 12 scores, so I divide by 12. So this doesn't give me a whole number, which is fine. The mean doesn't have to be a whole number. So to 1 decimal place, it gives me 6.9. So the average is about 6.9. So the point of these 3 things, the mean, median, and mode, is they are supposed to give you an idea of the center of your data. They're called measures of central tendency. They're supposed to summarize the data with one number to give you an indication of what was an average or a normal score. So sometimes the mean does a better job, sometimes the median does a better job, and sometimes the mode does a better job of telling you, but that's the point of all 3 of them, to summarize the data and give you an indication as to the center of the data. So we'll now calculate the range, and I'll do it in a different color because the range actually measures something different. So the range is just the highest score minus the lowest score. So in our set of data, the range is highest score 10 minus lowest score 1, which is 9. So people sometimes think when you ask the range, they write things like 1 to 10. No, when you ask the range, your answer should be one number and one number only. So unlike the mean, median, and mode, which measure the center of the data, the range measures the spread of the data. It's supposed to give an indication of how close the data is together. It doesn't tell you about the center point of the data. So a high range means there was a large difference between the top score and the bottom score. So if we were talking, let's say, about your test scores, the mean, median, and mode of your test scores are trying to tell you how the average or a normal person in the class went in the test. The range tells us, was there a big difference between the top student and the bottom student? Okay, so that's how you calculate them. So I'm just going to do another quick example, this time with an odd number of data points. So please pause and copy this down if you need. So here is a set of 5 data points. We're going to calculate the mean, median, mode, and range again. So remember, the mode is the most common. Now, in this case, we have 64 occurred twice and 70 occurred twice. So there are actually 2 most common numbers. There's nothing wrong with that. There can be more than one mode. Note, if none of the scores are repeated, we say there's no mode. But here, 2 scores were repeated, 2 scores were the most common, so there are 2 modes. So to find the median, remember I need the scores in order from smallest to largest. So I would just write them in order, and the median is the middle score. Now this time there are 5 scores, an odd number of scores, so one of the scores is the middle score. There's only one middle score. We know it's the middle score because there are 2 scores above it and 2 scores below it. So the median of this data is 68. So to find the mean, we add up all the scores and divide by how many there are. So here, if I add up all the scores, I get 336. I divide by 5 because there are 5 scores. So we get 67.2. You can use your calculator for that. So once again, mean, median, and mode are supposed to give you an indication of the center of this data, what a normal score was. The range doesn't tell you about the center of the data. It tells you the difference between the highest and the lowest. So the highest score is 70, the lowest is 64, so the range is 6. Remember, your answer should be one number. So of course 6 isn't close to any of the scores, but that's okay because the range isn't telling you about a normal score. This time the range is low, it indicates all the scores were close together. Alright, thank you so much for tuning into this video. This has been the luckiest maths teacher in the world. Have a great day.